Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome, excuse me, to the regular meeting of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry on Monday, April the 24th. Welcome to council members, staff, and any public that might be watching online. My apologies for my voice. I woke up this morning, and of all things, here I have to chair a meeting, and I can barely speak. Anyway, welcome everybody, and our warden, Tony Fraser, unfortunately isn't able to be here this morning, but I'm happy to let you know that you have a terrific replacement right here. So, I got in before you did, Jamie. So, okay, Madam Clerk, if we could please call this meeting to order by resolution.
It's moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre, that the meeting of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry be hereby called to order.
All in favor of the motion? Carried. None opposed. And the adoption of the agenda, Madam Clerk?
It's moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Broad, that Council approve the agenda.
Okay, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Madam Clerk, is now when we're going to pull that motion?
Yes, through you, Madam Warden, or Madam Deputy Warden, there is a resolution under consent from the Township of South Glengarry regarding rural education funding. I have drafted a resolution of support if we wanted to pull that and move that to miscellaneous business.
Okay, so we will move that under, miscellaneous business. Okay. Is there anything else? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? And seeing carried, none opposed. All right, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof? Yes, Councillor Gainto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'd like to declare conflict with respect to item 7.4a, the second resolution thereunder, due to a professional relationship with the applicant.
Okay, very good. Then we'll deal with that at the time of the motion. Thank you for that. The adoption of the minutes, please, Madam Clerk, for March the 20th.
Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor MacDonald, that the minutes of the meetings, including the in-camera minutes of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, held March 20th, 2023, be adopted as circulated.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Very good. Thank you, Councillor Bergeron. The motion is carried. We have two delegations this morning. The first up, is the Upper Canada District School Board. We have with us this morning our chair, John McAllister, and Ron Ferguson, the Director of Education, as well as Trustee Larry Barry in attendance. Oh, and hello, Trustee Jordan, good to see you. I'm sorry, I missed you there. You're hiding behind Mr. McAllister. Okay, please go ahead with your delegation and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors and your worship. Pleased to be here. It's a pleasure to be in this room again. And as you know, as you mentioned already, I'm joined by Director Ferguson and Trustees Barry and Jordan. Some of you may wonder why we, as a public board of education, what we're doing here. We have nothing to do with roads and bridges and all of the other issues that you deal with, but we do care about your kids. The Upper Canada District School Board serves all the students in your area, regardless of race, color, religion, economic status, ability. And I think that is a very important mandate. It's unique to the Upper Canada, to a public board such as the Upper Canada District School Board, and we take that very seriously. Consider the school board, if you will, in a business way, as one of the main businesses in your area. We have a head office in Brockville, and we have something like 89 satellite offices in in all of your communities, and those, of course, are our schools. We employ over 4,000 employees, and we have a budget of over about $460 million. Of course, we're more than a business, because we are in the business of developing minds and hearts and souls of young people. The good news is that we're not here to ask for any money or any resources. We just want a few minutes of your time. And our purpose today is to share with you the status of public education in your communities and what's important for our students in our most recent initiatives. I know a little bit about this level of government, as you may or may not know, some of you, having been a councillor in a reeve in the village of Iroquois for 6 years, 12 years actually, and therefore a member of these United Counties way back. So I appreciate the work you do. So the reason we're here is that community is one of the 4 priority areas in the Upper Canada District School Board strategic plan. We hope to use, we do use real-world learning to increase community connections, to enhance student engagement, pathways, and learning. I want to talk about this new logo for a moment, which you can see on the screen. It was time for a refresh after 25 years, because the school board was formed and amalgamated in 1998. It represents who we are, what we hope to do, and we hope that it's some sort of an inspiration to everybody. It represents a new frame of mind, and I hope what you see here is obviously a maple leaf. There is a student. There is a person with outstretched arms showing excitement. Within the leaf, an open book representing our dedication to learning, and the colors, which represent diversity, our commitment to equity and inclusion, and with the orange being a nod to the commitment to Indigenous education. You may have heard that the Ontario Public School Boards Association has been lobbying the Ontario government to lift the moratorium on school closures. While that may be necessary in some parts of the province, it is not happening here. It is not necessary in Upper Canada. We did our heavy lifting in 2017, and there are no further planned closures, nor has there been any discussion of such at the board table or anywhere that I am aware of. So the answer to are there any school closures is a full stop no, and I hope that you will help me to squelch these rumors, because it is just not true, period. The provincial government and both ministers Lecce and McNaughton are supporting and promoting the trades. We are fully on board and prepared. So are we at the Upper Canada District School Board, closely aligned with this policy in our initiatives to support real-world learning, by supporting massive investments in our shops, curriculum, and the development of community partnerships. It is one of the 5 major initiatives in the board's strategic plan and the director's work plan, both of which, incidentally, are on one page. Who could argue with that? I'm in full support of this bill, which is entitled, the new bill, which is entitled the Better Schools and Outcomes Act. While we are in agreement with it, in principle, the devil is in the details, as you all know. I did write the minister late last week, suggesting that rather than going back to the basics, what we really want to do is to go forward with the basics, which we are doing already in spades. And I'm going to turn this over to Director Ferguson at this point.
Thank you. Good morning. Through you, Madam Chair. So one of the commitments that the Upper Canada School Board has made in the Director's Work Plan is around reading. Folks may be familiar with some of the information that came out through the Right to Read report that the Human Rights Commission had published, and in there it was pretty scathing about what public education's been doing around reading in the last few decades. And you know, after reading that and reflecting on some things happening, we accepted the findings, as has the Ministry of Education. And the Upper Canada School Board is now working as quickly as possible to make some pivots and some shifts. The good news is most of our educators were in favor of what we are now trying to do and what the ministry is trying to do. They want to teach kids to read the way that probably everyone in this room learned how to read, and that was through phonics and sounding out words. We kind of moved away from that and had more of an emphasis on an approach where we were students were taught to guess through something called the cueing system and looking at pictures, and it didn't work very well. That's not how I learned to read, and as I said, it's probably not how you learned how to read. And unfortunately, students weren't learning how to read as well as they could have been when we pivoted towards that. So we are going forward to the basics of teaching students how to read effectively. And a couple things we've done ahead of the curve here a little bit. We knew that a number of students needed to be caught up, especially after the pandemic, but also because of some of these missteps around reading. And so we, back in February, hired another 19 special education teachers and created specialized classrooms. In addition to that, an educational assistants in each of those classrooms as well. And we now have 30 of those around the board. We had 11 before, added another 19. And that's meant to catch students up and get them back on the path to success. The other thing we've done, we've invested through the funds provided by the government through tutoring and some other funds that we had from in other areas, over $2 million in reading resources and tutoring supports for students to try to get them caught up. So certainly headed in the right direction and excited about this. You know, I've said before, if kids aren't learning how to read, I mean, what are we doing? I mean, that's the whole very foundational part of the education system. We can go to the next slide. So another part of our director's work plan is student success and student culture, and this includes a 90% graduation rate. I don't think there's anyone in this chamber that would disagree with the fact that the path to success for students in our communities is that everybody at a very minimum has a high school education and then goes on to there to pursue things. So we're working very hard to achieve this, and we've seen some incredible success already with our credit attainment and where students are. Obviously, if you fail courses in grades 9, 10, 11, and 12, that's going to make it difficult for you to graduate once you get to the end. And so credit attainment is central to that role, and there's many other tools and steps that we've employed as well. I won't drain the whole slide here, but there's many efforts that we're doing. Thank you very much, and I'll turn things back over to the chair.
Thank you, Director. If you will permit me a brief moment, I want to do some bragging here. As you may have heard, the Forbes Economic Group magazine recognized in a very unsolicited way the Upper Canada District School Board as one of the top 300 employers in Canada. And it's a big deal. Only 2 boards of education were mentioned in this survey, and ours was the higher of the 2. The staff culture is a priority for the Upper Canada District School Board, and ensuring that staff feel supported and appreciated is a priority for the Upper Canada District School Board. And I think that was perhaps one of the keys to being recognized by Forbes. So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the board, I want to thank you for listening to us. I want to thank you for your welcome, and I would be more than happy to take the questions. The easy ones I will take. The more difficult ones I'm going to shift over to my colleague here.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions, please, from councillors? Councillor McGillis, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Madam Warden. The secondary end of Rothwell Osnabrück School has been closed since 2017, and we see that it's being maintained periodically. What is the use of that area now? And if there's no use to it, what is the plan for the use of that space?
Through you, Madam Chair. When we have a space that's available, we certainly look to community partnerships and things that would be a good fit for schools, and so we're open to people's suggestions on that at times. If it's something that we can make work, there's a lot of steps you'd have to take. And as you said, it is used occasionally for various purposes, but again, we're open to discussions with people if people have ideas about things they'd like to see space used for. One of the things that has just been tabled, it's the legislation that's going through right now, is exactly that, and encouraging boards to collaborate better with other school boards, but also with municipalities to make good use of these spaces that are all part of the public, the public purse pays for them. And we're certainly always willing to work with folks for daycares and other municipal things that might make sense in those spaces.
Councillor McGillis, anything further? No. Councillor Guédon, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to echo what Councillor McGillis said, I would appreciate maybe if the school board would set up a meeting with the Township of South Stormont in the near future to discuss potential uses of that center. You can just reach out to the mayor or myself or the CIO, and I'd like to further that discussion.
Sure, if you reach out to us, we'd be happy to do that.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Warden. Great to hear that there won't be any more school closures, but governments change in Toronto, school boards change. Are we looking to the future that, we obviously see the future and that some of the schools are at half capacity still. It's great that you're not closing them now, but are there any discussions with the other school boards about shared spaces? Is there any communication between school boards? If we go back to what we presented to Minister Lecce back 2 years ago about the Glengarry solution, there are ways to have education in our own community, but at the same time sharing spaces with other school boards that make greater sense. So just wondering if there's been any talk between school boards.
Well, as you know, Councillor, in your particular municipality, many years ago, we had a shared space with the French board at Glengarry District High School, and all I can say is that we would welcome any kind of shared space discussion. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just that through you, Madam Chair, as the Chair mentions, that we're always open to those conversations. There have been some places where we're able to do that. It's fairly complicated, but it is something that we're willing to explore with folks, and if people are interested in that from other boards, we'd be interested in having those conversations.
Councillor Lang, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the presentation, guys. So that I almost heard you say that you'd be all right with the moratorium staying in place for now.
You have heard absolutely correctly.
And I'm very happy to hear that you're looking to get back to teaching kids to read. It was very frustrating for a time there. I think a lot of us who are a little older were very frustrated with what was going on in the school system, and I think this is a good move. It's never too late to say that we screwed up and we're going to change and go back the way it was. So I'm glad to hear that that's happening. My question is, it sounds as though we're hearing that you're talking about flipping the start times now again. It was a pretty big deal at Williamstown, as I'm sure you're well aware. I'd like to see it go back to the same start time, but it sounds like instead of doing that, you're looking to reverse it between the public or the elementary and the high school. Can you comment on that?
Yes, I'd be glad to. With regard to reading the screw up, I just want to point out that that was a North American phenomenon and not an Upper Canada phenomenon, uniquely. With regard to the motion which you are referring to, it was put forth by Trustee McDonald last month or 2 weeks ago, and it was essentially a motion to flip the times between, the younger students and the older students. And there was a reason for that. And the main reason was that the science, the data has proved that adolescents especially in, the 14 to 18 year range, 13 to 18, do not get enough sleep. And that, it has an impact on their circadian rhythm, and they are much less productive early in the morning and more productive later in the day. That is the sound reasoning for the flip. I have to add, though, that this is a long journey, because it means that we are negotiating with the Catholic District School Board, the Board of Directors of the Student Transportation of Eastern Ontario. So it's not a done deal. From our perspective, it is, but it's in the works. Where it's going to go eventually, I can't tell you. I don't know.
Can I? Thank
Ron,
you.
would you like to add
go
to
ahead. Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I'll just say, too, that there will be consultations coming, so we'll have opportunity for people to give their feedback. And I know, as you mentioned in your area, people were very resistant to flipping it and having the high school start earlier. And a lot of the rationale and arguments that people made were the ones that we're now agreeing with. And so, I do apologize to your area, because people were trying to keep it the way that we're now talking about going to. And as the chair said, that's based on what our chief psychologists, all of the medical institutions and professional folks tell us about what's good for teenagers. And again, that is what people from your area were saying very loudly. And we're certainly now listening to that and looking at it for a broad, throughout the school board. But there will be public consultation as part of that process. And I'll just mention around the reading as well, that, as the chair said, this wasn't something that's just an Upper Canada School Board issue, and it certainly wasn't our teachers. I don't ever want to make it sound like our teachers decided to teach in a way that didn't work. Most teachers were actually saying for a very long time, hey, we don't think this is the most effective way. It was an education system problem, and the teachers were teaching the way the teachers' colleges told them to teach. And we're starting to see everybody come to the realization that that wasn't based on science, and it's very similar to the conversation around school start times. We need to look at what the data says. We can't just base things on our feeling, our intuition, or what we think is right. We have to say, well, what actually is happening for children and what's the best for them, and then make our decisions, whether they're popular or not, based on what's the best for the children.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I appreciate those comments, both on the start times and the reading. And I'm quite sure the parents in our area will as well, and grandparents now. Something that to keep in mind, and I'm glad to hear there's going to be community consultation. It's a big thing, and it goes a long ways. But you could help not just the teenagers' time, but you'd help parents' time if we could get both the public and high school and Charlotte back to the same times. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor McGillis and then Councillor MacDonald, please.
Thank you again, Madam Warden. My question is, what policies are in place? And not all students are getting the proper nutrition going to school, especially the younger children. Is there anything that you, in the Upper Canada District School Board, policies are in place to ensure that, the kids are hungry, they're not learning? So is there anything that we're doing in that manner?
I'll make a brief comment, but through our Upper Canada Leisure Centre and our international education portfolio, we are addressing that in a major way. I don't know if you're aware of it, but there's a school nutrition program which is operated by us, actually, as the lead board for 5 other boards, I believe, and with the exception of Ottawa Carleton, but all the local boards. And there are millions of dollars going into this. There are all kinds of programs, backpack programs. I don't have the data in front of me, but I know it is a major development in our schools, and has been now for some time. It's been hidden under the radar, frankly, but we're trying to elevate it.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd also like to follow up with Councillor Lang's comment, not just about Williamstown, but Iroquois, because I feel they're somewhat unique and they have campuses. So if there's a broad stroke, maybe some unique situations to follow up on having that shared start time. We heard it, and I'm sure you heard it about farm communities, families trying to, like the extension of the day because one starts before and at the end. And I think those two communities might have similar things. So Iroquois Public and I believe Seaway are basically campus, Williamstown and Charlotte the same way. And then just a question for the benefits from all secondary schools starting at the same time. Have you seen them and what would they be? Because we don't all share the same buses, so like a staggered start might be something to look at to accomplish some of the goals I hope in Iroquois and Williamstown perhaps.
I think what you are addressing is the district-wide timetable, whereas every high school in our board area starts at the same time. And there is a very good reason for that, and I'd like to ask the director to comment on it.
Sure. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So one of the reasons that we went to the same start time, and as you've just heard, the Upper Canada School Board is realizing that it should have been later. It shouldn't have been 8 o'clock. It should have been 9 or 9:30 start time. But the fact that they all start at the same time has provided a lot of opportunities for us. With our smaller high schools, obviously you heard the chair make a commitment to try to keep schools open. When we are able to have the same timetable, that means we can utilize things like e-learning and other things where students can be taking the same course at the same time in different parts of the board, and that certainly provides a lot of opportunities there. When you have a school, one of the schools in the area where the chair was elected has 212 students from grade 7 all the way to 12. It's pretty hard to provide a full complement of the high school courses in that, in a school of that size. But when you have the aligned timetable, you are able to then offer courses at similar times. It also helps when we're organizing sports and other events to have everybody start and end at the same time. It certainly makes things align a lot better. So there's many advantages to it. But there's some challenges around it as well with busing. But so far, we're certainly happy with the decision to have all the high schools have the same time, start time and finish time. But as you've heard, the board has reconsidered whether that should have been 8 o'clock or follow what the research shows and have it start later.
Are there any other questions or comments around the table? Excuse me. I would just like to say that the tone is very refreshing, and it's nice. It's really nice to hear words like community consultation and the fact that you understand that schools are important in our communities. They're so important. They're vital, and I feel a little bit of sense of relief probably for the first time in many years, and so thank you, and we'll hold you to it.
I just want to point out one more thing. With regard to our logo, which you have here in front of you at the moment, I forgot to mention, there's a little dot there in the middle. That little dot is the student. And we want to keep the students as our main focus in everything that we say and do.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll just say one last thing. When you talk about commitments to small towns and to rural communities and to schools, I was born and raised in this district. I went to Upper Canada School Board schools. I went to a small little school called Montague, grew up in a village or a hamlet called Newmagate. I'd be surprised if anybody knows where that is. But I also still live in the district, and my children go to Upper Canada School Board schools, just smaller ones. Have an hour bus ride, so we're still working on that. So I feel when I hear people reach out and have some of the challenges or things that they want to see happen, I'm living that as a parent as well. And the chair also grew up in small areas and still lives in the rural towns, and his children and grandchildren are all in our district too. So we're not, we understand because we're part of this as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. If there's nothing else, Chair McAllister, Director Ferguson, and Trustees Jordan and Barry, thank you for joining us today. And thanks again for the presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship, and your councillors. Thank you.
Next up, next up we have the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, more commonly known as EORN. And this morning we have CAO Jim Pine with us, as well as Lisa Severson, who is the Communications Director. This is an important organization, especially currently what they have underway. I'm just a new member on the board, and I can tell you that the CELGET project that they are managing is one heck of a large project. and it is going to solve many of our cell gap problems across the rural regions. So with that, welcome.
Go ahead, Lisa. I'll find it here.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. We're always happy to come to SDG. It's only a 45-minute drive for me, so it's quick. So Jim is just pulling up the presentation, and he's going to begin. Just so the members know, this will probably be his last presentation to your county council as the CAO of the County of Hastings. Jim is retiring in June, but he'll be staying on to work with the ORN on a part-time basis. So
now you know why I retire. I can't get a PowerPoint presentation up on the thing, but I can use Lisa's screen. Thank you very much, and I'm really thrilled to be here. Lisa was kind enough to let me come and help her with the presentation to do the annual update for EORN. As Lisa said, this is my last. I've only got 2 more county council meetings. No, hold it, 3. I guess I better go to all 3 at home. And so I've always really enjoyed coming here. You've always been a friend to, well, to me personally, of course, but also to EORN and to the EOWC. And I just want to thank you for your leadership, because frankly, these have been tough projects to put together, but they came together because, you know, SDG was always stood out in front, helping us to get there. So I just want to say thanks very much for that and for letting me do this presentation. So if I've got this right, Lisa, let's see if I can do this. So we're here just to give you an update on what EORN's been doing over the last year or so, try to answer some of your questions, and tell you a little bit about where we're going in the next year or so. A little short agenda, just tell you a little bit about our core ideas and our values, what we've done in terms of project work, and as I say, where we're going next year, and then hopefully take some questions. We thought it was important to talk about our core values because we are not-for-profit. You're not-for-profit, actually, because the EOWC set us up back in 2010, really to try and drive some economic development across Eastern Ontario, and by doing that first broadband project that we did way back when, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And so we really are an organization that's yours to try and bring value, not only to SDG, but to all the members of the EOWC right across Eastern Ontario. And we like to do that with, we like to think we're innovative in terms of the way we approach solutions, and we like to do it on a regional basis and make sure that the members get good value for the work that we do. And as the slide said, it's a very small group of folks. Normally in a non-project period of time, there's 2 or 2.5 folks, Lisa being one who's full-time, and Jason St. Pierre, who's the new CEO. But right now, while we're in this cell project gap, we've grown massively to 13 people, and some of us part-time, to try and bring the project to fruition. So, just a little bit about our projects. This is a short timeline of what we've done since we were incorporated back in 2010. It was the way the EOWC decided that the vehicle to help this regional approach would be to incorporate a not-for-profit. We did our first project starting in 2010, which was a broadband project, traditional broadband project. We put about 5,500 kilometers of transport fiber around the region, which has served us really well in this next phase of connectivity. We connected a lot of communities, including First Nations communities, and we worked closely with those folks throughout the course of the project. And we put fiber into 63 business parks, which, again, we thought was a good idea then, but is really paying off now as companies are able in those business parks to get the speed that they need to do their business. So it was a good project, had a value of about $260 million, and we finished it back in 2015. And as soon as we got done, the Warden's Caucus said, thank you, but there's another piece of connectivity that's missing in our region that has big problems, and that's cellular connectivity. There are big gaps around the region. So they put us to work developing a business case for it so that we could take it to government, to federal and provincial governments. And we did that, and by about 2020, I think it was, Lisa, we had put the business case in front of governments federally and provincially, and they were supportive of it. And I'll show you a slide a little later about how much money they're putting into the cell project. And then we got the green light to go, and we put together a request for proposal to go out to the marketplace to find our private sector partner for the cell project. And back in 2021, we announced that Rogers had been selected after a really rigorous process to look at who we might use. Bell was the other company that bid the project, but we ended up with Rogers and signed that contract, and we got started. And the first towers that were constructed, and I'll show you in just a second, were started last year. So we're right into the effort, but it took us from 2014 to get to today. It just takes a lot of time to put these big regional efforts together. So thank you for sticking with us through that process. Just a little bit about the technology itself very quickly, a very simple chart here to tell you there is a difference between cellular and fixed wireless. I have a little fixed wireless slide next. But essentially we're talking about connecting with your mobile device, your phone, your tablet, wherever you go throughout the region, and being able to stick and have that connectivity stay with you as you perhaps go through the region, or whether you're at home or at your business. The technology that we're using is allowing us to do obviously the 4G LTE standard service, and we're putting 5G capability onto it now, so we're future-proofing the cell system with our Rogers partner. So it's generally we need big towers, and we'll talk about that, so that we can connect people as they move around. On the fixed wireless side, usually there's a receiver on a person's house or business. There's a tower that you need a line of sight to make that connection. That was our first project in many ways. That was we used a lot of fixed wireless in that first project so that people could get connected. But essentially there's an antenna on your receiver on your building, and a tower that you use with a line of sight to make that connection. So just a little bit about the two different technologies. In both cases, having very good fiber transport to connect the towers together is really important, and we were pretty successful in doing that through the project. So as I said, we started in 2014. Here we are in 2022 with the cell project, and we're under construction. The idea of why we're doing this is because when we looked around back in 2014-15 and realized there are both big and small gaps in coverage, cellular speaking. And there are some areas in our region where you can go 100 kilometers and not get connected to anything. And so we just knew that needed to be fixed. And this slide is just a simple representation of what a tower site looks like. You've got different levels of service, from high definition through to what we call sort of the standard SD. It gives you opportunity to do some web browsing and work, and then the ubiquitous cell coverage where you could make a 911 call, for instance. But there are gaps, so we needed to fill those gaps. The goals that we have for the project are, I wouldn't say lofty, but they're certainly ones that require a lot of work. The 99% coverage where people live, work, and travel on major roadways is the one that is really important for public safety. We want to be sure that people can make that 911 call. If you're in that 100-kilometer gap, you probably can't make a 911 call, and we've seen examples of that. So we want to fix that on the public safety side. But we also want to make sure that there's enough capacity in the network to do things other than just make a phone call with your tablet or your mobile device or your phone. So these are the second pieces of the goals, or the 95% coverage in terms of the standard service definition level that supports email, web browsing, media service, those things. And then the 85% coverage for high definition. That's for you video sharing. And we can imagine into the future services like our paramedic services, for instance, where having a video link into the hospital as they're going, from picking up the patient to the emergency room is going to be really important. So we want to make sure that that kind of service can be provided as well through this project. The project itself is a big one. Rogers came to the table with an existing footprint of towers in Eastern Ontario, 312 to be exact. All of those are being upgraded with new equipment, the LTE and 5G equipment, and they've been doing a really good job since we signed the contract with. They got 297 almost done in terms of upgrading the existing towers. So people are already getting the benefits of the project if you're connecting off one of those upgraded towers. We need to build about 260 more towers to close those gaps in coverage. A big effort. 13 are done. The first 3, and we'll show you in a little bit, that were completed were here in SDG. So we're making good progress on that. 74 sites are co-locations. So an existing tower might be a Bell, might be a different third-party company that Rogers is contracted with to put their equipment on it. Saves us from having to build those 74 sites. Makes good sense, economical way of doing it. So we work with other providers. Everything that we do is supposed to be done by the end of 2025. It sounds like a long time, but here we are in 2023. So we've got a lot of work in front of us, but we're good for that. And we are required by contract with Ontario and Canada is to meet or exceed our goals, but we've also put in place with Rogers service level agreements that extend beyond the construction period so that we can make sure people continue to get the service that we've contracted with Rogers to do for a 5-year period. All of those things are in place. Just some of the benefits. We want to, of course, close the gaps and increase capacity in the system, make sure people can make a 911 call. But we know that it's going to be good, as I said, for our own municipal services, whether you're in public works or paramedic services. You can imagine other services where being connected is really important. And we know, of course, because we talked to our businesses a lot through these times when we're forming projects, that it means a lot to the business sector in terms of their ability to grow their business too, particularly in tourism areas. So people are really anxious to get this project done so that they could be better connected in their businesses. And as I said, we've tried to build this network so that it will be future-proof, that we can use the infrastructure for continued technology rollouts that require this kind of infrastructure. In terms of the finances, it's a big project. It's $300 million plus in terms of the investment in Eastern Ontario. Rogers is committed to at least $150 million worth of that investment, so they've come to the table with a substantial private sector investment. Both Canada and Ontario are also providing money, about $71 million each, and then the remainder is made up by contributions like yours from SDG to the EOWC or local share of about $10 million. There's lots of parts of a project that are not eligible for government subsidy, like legal costs, those things. Those are the kinds of things, and project management costs that the EOWC through EORN is absorbing through their contribution. In your case, the $575,000 is your contribution to that $10 million. And we've done a rough calculation of what that might mean in terms of return on investment. I think when we're finished the project, we'll come back to you with being able to give you hard costs of the kind of investments that were made, but we're imagining at least between a minimum of 20 to 1 for every dollar you put in, you get $20 back in infrastructure. I think it's going to be more like 50 to 1 in that neighborhood, just thinking out what the kind of infrastructure that's going to be going in here. So pretty good return on investment for your money, and it's the same for EOWC members across the region. A little more specific to SDG, this chart just shows you what the regional project looks like and how it's panning out here for SDG. So 18 tower upgrades have been completed here, that they're all done. We need to build 11 new towers, 3 are done. We need 6 co-locations, 2 are done. And the good news on the new towers is the LUAs, or Land Use Authority approvals, are in place. So thank you very much at your local communities for helping us get those Land Use Authority approvals in place. So a pretty good investment in terms of the infrastructure for the United Counties. One of the benefits of SDG, of course, it's a little bit flatter in spots than some parts in the northern parts of Eastern Ontario, so a little bit easier for us to do the project. This is a slide just to let you know that it takes time to actually build a tower. So this represents from the moment that when we hired Rogers, they sent their engineering team out to look at where do we have gaps and where do we need to put towers. So we got to find locations, and then they negotiate a lease with the landowner. These are on private lands or municipal lands. Then, as part of our consultation work with First Nations, we are doing archaeological assessments, stage 1 and stage 2, on all new tower sites, as well as a natural heritage assessment of sites. We need to get land use authority approval, which we've done, notify the province, which we've done. There's 129 new towers that have been released for construction to date, so we've got a good catalog of sites ready to build. And then, of course, they build it. And all the way through this whole process, we've been working with First Nation and Indigenous communities in consultation. They're very involved in the archaeological assessments and the natural heritage things. So it takes anywhere between a year to 18 months to do the whole thing, to get to construction. So it takes time. That's why we're busy trying to get a lot done in a short period of time. Just a moment on the issue of duty results, something that you're very familiar with, I know here, given your relationships with your neighbors across the river. We were designated by the Crown to lead the consultations for 18 communities and organizations, which we've been doing since we got started on the project. It's actually been a really encouraging and interesting and rewarding kind of effort for us on the team. Lisa and I and 2 other members of the comms team do the DTC work. And so we're creating really good relationships, we think, through this work with the project. The EOWC, right at the very beginning of the project, said, listen, every community in East Ontario needs to get a benefit of this project, and that includes our Indigenous neighbors. So we've been working closely with them to make sure that they get the benefits that we get to. As I said, we got 129 towers ready to go at this point. Through the process, we've had a lot of meetings. We regularly meet with communities, over 120 meetings so far, and more to come, because we're going to be doing this right through the end of the project with our First Nation neighbors. A little bit on towers. They're either going to be 60 meters or 90 meters high. That's what we need to do in order to get the coverage. You see them around the landscape, of course, and as I said, supporting current technology and certainly future technology. The equipment on it, you see these white antennas. They're, someone said they're about the same size as a fridge, a door. They're loaded on the gantry or whatever it's called, and then raised up onto the tower. They build it on the ground and hoist them up as they go. Just a bit of interest there. And what we're doing for 2023, I said it's a busy year for us. We need to build about 85 towers this year to keep on schedule. We need to make sure all the upgrades are done, and that they will be done. We also got a new board of directors, Karma being one of the newest. And so we're working with the new board as well, helping them understand the project and what we've been doing. And we do other things as well as this project. We're working in this public safety broadband space. That's where they're trying to establish a national public safety broadband network for first responders. And Lisa and I have been part of that for many years now. Seems to be ramping up a bit more, so we're involved in that as an organization. We're trying to help Ontario with their broadband programs now as they roll out across your communities through the AHIPS SIP program. So we're giving them a bit of advice when they ask for it, and we've been working a little bit closely with them, which is great. And now we're very much looking at how do we help our municipalities across Eastern Ontario around cybersecurity. We've got some real good expertise inside EORN, and we're working on some proposals to help both counties and local municipalities with this whole issue of cybersecurity, which we all know is really important. And that's it. If you got a question, Lisa's right here, or you can talk to Jason. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we take a question from Councillor Bergeron, then Councillor McGillis, and Councillor Densham and Landry.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Okay, my knowledge of technology is very low, and I live in South Mountain. Last fall, I did see a tower go up at the fairgrounds. Now I see Rogers is helping to fund these towers. Well, my question is, are these shared towers, like I'm a Bell person, will that Rogers Tower work for me?
In order to get access to the Rogers Tower, you need to be a Rogers customer. So Bell has a network, of course, as well. So we're working with Rogers. That tower, I think, is a Rogers Tower, Lisa, or is it a?
Yes,
We don't know.
yeah, from the map, it's one of these.
One of our new ones, okay. Yeah. So, it's Rogers owns the equipment and the customers.
Okay, so what's happening then is, you're saying it's filling gaps.
Yes.
That's the whole process. But if Rogers is filling the gaps, and a lot of us are not Rogers customers, how does that fill our gaps?
Well,
That's the question.
If you want to jump in, Lisa, but there's roaming agreements between the two companies. In fact, there's roaming agreements between the majors. And so if you lose a signal from as a Bell customer, Rogers will pick you up on there, and you can do. Now, you can't do all of the high definition services and stuff. It's really to keep your voice coverage intact. Is that right?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is correct, but there has to be a contract, and so we'd have to check to see if Bell actually has that contractual contract with Rogers for that area. They're fairly specific about where they have the contracts. But we have clarified you can, so say in the event that something happened and you needed to make that 911 call, you would be able to do that from your cell phone, regardless if you were a Bell or a Rogers or a Freedom subscriber, you would be able to make that call. But day-to-day use, they also have contractual, many of the towers, as you can see from co-locations, there is the ability for Bell and other cell phone operators, TELUS, Freedom, to co-locate on those towers. Again, that's a contractual conversation between the two parties, but that's also a capability.
Councillor McGillis.
Thank you. Madam Warden, you made me chuckle a little bit when you said way back then when you started the broadband. That was back in 2010. I was the warden then.
I know.
And I just wanted to say that, your time and your service and the commitment that you provided for both these big projects, the broadband and also the improvements in the cell gaps and the towers and everything like that, and the funding that you were able to procure you've done a lot for this whole region, and I just wanted to say thank you. And when you do decide one day, it won't be probably too long from here, the way it sounds, that you're going to be retiring. And I just want to say thanks for everything that you've done, and your service was invaluable. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And I've been partners in crime on this EORN thing since it was birthed. So Lisa's been a part of the ride too.
I'm still here.
She's still there. She's a lot younger than I am.
Councillor Densham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and congratulations on your upcoming retirement. I was looking at the maps, and it looks like there's going to be a co-location in.
We're going to deal with that in camera, if that's okay. We can't talk about specific locations publicly yet for competitive reasons, but we're going to be able to talk to you.
I was just referring to the map, though.
Yeah, I know.
Is that okay?
Is that okay? Just to hold it?
Yeah, fair enough. But let me ask a question more general then. Okay. Will you be able to provide a projected coverage map so that we can understand whether or not there are gaps? There is a particular area in our area where you drop calls. Invariably, you drop calls. And again, understanding you have to be Rogers. I'm wondering whether or not that area is going to be covered. And I guess as a follow-up to that, are you still accepting applications for additional towers if there are gaps in areas? Is that still an opportunity in the near future?
Through you, Madam Chair, our technical team, once the majority of the towers are completed, they have committed to looking at areas that still may have gaps, and they will, depending on how much money is left, they'll prioritize those areas if there are any.
Great. Okay, thank you. Just a quick point. What's interesting about this point is Google Maps is sending a lot of traffic up one particular road where there is a dead spot. And so I think it would be an advantage to Rogers to actually have a tower there to keep the customers. So.
And we can take it offline. You can send me an email with that location, and I can flag it to our tech team, who will work with the Rogers team to at least make sure it's in the works for planning.
Great. And is there a broadband coverage map as well? What's been achieved in terms of broadband coverage? Because again, the antennas, we've gone wireless in terms of broadband, but there still are some areas, very rural farming areas, that I'm wondering whether or not that's something we can look at.
So there is public mapping that's been created by ISED that shows the different types of connectivity. So it has cell, it has fixed wireless, it has fiber. That's available. I can provide that link for folks if that would help.
Great, yes, thank you.
And I think there's good things coming through the programs that both the federal and provincial government, the Universal Broadband Fund through the federal government, and then the Accelerated High-Speed Internet program that the provincial government is rolling out. I think you'll see some great improvement in SDG.
Super, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Landry.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So I know the order of the day right now is more cell gaps, but if we go back to broadband, so as we're laying more fiber, and you can see some of our communities are done, other ones, when you see the locates, flags popping up through the whole town is a good sign. So it brought some discussion over the weekend. In regards to rural, so where it's more basically dealt with wireless, myself included, so I'm on a package of 25 megabytes per second, which is fair to say I get about 10, 12, depending on the time. So to actually work off my work server does not always maintain what my needs are. So with the project overall, and as far as what is so I know the fiber is going through our communities, but when we fall outside of the communities into rural areas, is there a goal of reaching a higher megabyte per second, or maybe you can relate? I didn't have an answer for them, so I don't know if you can help me out. Thanks.
So I think the mandate, and again, I'll send you the actual correct numbers, so this is just off of memory. I think the federal and the provincial, I think the federal government has a 95% rate for all Canadians to get at a minimum 50 by 10. The Ontario government's program has a similar set point. Again, I think I do know that there are some of the ISPs that were successful in winning some of the areas within Eastern Ontario. I know they are starting to go out and meeting with staff and councils in regards to what's coming. And from what I've seen at a high level, I think many in the rural area will benefit greatly from what's coming from those programs. So stay tuned. I think you'll probably have visits from some of those ISPs in the future. Again, we're not leading that project, but we can assist, and we're working with those ISPs to set up meetings with municipal staff as well as with councils to inform them more. I know that the federal and provincial government, there's a requirement to make announcements. So I think anything that's shared is at, a confidential level right now until some of those announcements come out. But again, I think there's good things coming for the rural folks of Eastern Ontario through those programs. So both levels of government have to be congratulated on that.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you so much for the presentation. It was very informative, and Jorn is doing great work for us here in Eastern Ontario. So on behalf of everyone, thank you. We will now be heading into closed session. Excuse me. Pardon me. We'll now be heading into closed session. and then we'll be back to the regular meeting after that. Madam Clerk?
It's moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre, that council proceed in camera pursuant to Section 239(2)(I) of the Municipal Act 2001, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relation information supplied in confidence to the municipality, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations or a person, group of persons, or organization for a matter related to cell tower location information. And pursuant to Section 239(2)(E) of the Municipal Act 2001, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board for a project matter.
There you go. All in favor of the motion? Seeing all in favor, it's carried. Excuse me. Okay. Go ahead. to rise and reconvene, Madam Chair.
It's moved by Councillor MacDonald, seconded by Councillor Densham, that council rise and reconvene without reporting.
All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you very much. We are on to 7.2, which is 2022 reserve transactions. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Broad, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry approve the 2022 reserve transactions up to the following amounts: $565,069 to be allocated to the Roads Projects Reserve, negative $193,151 to be allocated from Roads Projects Reserves, $64,222 to be allocated to the Roads Reserve Permit Project, $50,000 to be allocated to the IT Reserve, $50,000 to be allocated to the Tourism Reserve, $206,600 to be allocated to the Planning Reserve, $250,000 to be allocated to the Regional Incentives Program Reserve, $50,000 to be allocated to the Building Reserve, $407 to be allocated to the Police Reserve, $5,442 to be allocated to the Alarm Reserve. Any accumulated general surplus as at December 31st, 2022 will be allocated to the Working Reserve.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Good morning, Council. So the Municipal Act requires a resolution from Council directing on how surplus and deficits be allocated for the previous year. So this resolution also includes reserves transactions recommended by staff, most of which are already included in the approved 2023 budget. So any general surplus at December 31st, 2022 will be allocated to the Working Reserve. Should Council wish that I go through any of these reserve transactions individually, I would be happy to do so.
Would you like a treasurer to go through it one by one? No. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Carried, none opposed. Thank you very much, Rebecca. All right, on to 7.3, transportation acquisition of new forest property. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Gaydon, seconded by Councillor MacDonald, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry authorize the Director of Transportation Services to finalize the acquisition and transfer of part of the east half of Lot 26, Concession 1, North Glengarry, a 28-acre parcel to be used as county forest, based on the following terms: payment of $15,000 to the owner, representing a value of $3,000 an acre for the 5 acres currently cleared; issuance of a charitable donation receipt for the balance based on an appraised value of the forested portion of the property, approximately 23 acres. Exclusive hunting rights on the property be provided to a specific user for the first 10 years after the date of sale, and all costs associated with the sale and transfer be borne by SDG.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. This is a great news story, obviously, for SDG. Again, another acquisition of property, and actually acquisition through partial sale and donation by the landowner. Very generous individual that Phil and I have met with, and wants to preserve that forested land. Great location. It's consistent with the types of acquisitions we've done in the past in terms of split cash versus receipt, charitable receipt. And right beside an existing property we have, so creating an even bigger contiguous property. So all in all, just excellent kind of fit for us, and the landowner is very excited to work with the counties in this regard. With the cleared area, we're actually looking into, again, with council's approval of, I guess the formalization of this, we're looking into tree planting, so restoring some additional trees in that cleared area, and unfortunately Phil couldn't be here today, but his recommendation is to get it done right away, like start looking at it this spring, and the reason being is it's a tilled land. We let it sit fallow even till next year. We start to fight nature coming back, and in a way that perhaps we don't want to. We want to encourage some species that are going to be compatible with the forest. So again, with council's approval, we're going to start working even on that replanting initiative on those 5 acres, because there's lots of funding out there to be able to do that work. So all in all, great news story, and happy to answer any questions council might have.
Thank you. Just a quick question before I go to Councillor Densham. What species are you planning on planting there?
will have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
I leave that with the expert.
Thank you, Councillor Densham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's great. I fully endorse this, and I've said this through South Nation as well. I think it's actually quite a compliment when a citizen puts their trust in us holding their legacy, and so congratulations from that perspective. I guess the question is, and I think I know the answer, but I'd like to kind of hear it officially. What is our policy in terms of retaining land such as this, especially donated land where people have an expectation that we would be caring for it and stewarding it into the future? How often do we actually take property that we own and sell it, and under what conditions, generally speaking, if at all?
Property like this, there's no kind of direction intent to ever sell the land. The idea is to retain it, maintain it. So what happens essentially next for this property and properties we've acquired over the last little bit is we start incorporating it into our 20-year forest management plan. So that looks at all the functions of the forest, and when we have to do selective harvesting, identifying other opportunities on those forests such as maple tapping, things like that. So the answer to the question is really never. The intention and the direction we've always received from council is this is an important part of maintaining forest cover in our region and a way to protect forest cover. So we want to do that in a sustainable manner, and that's why we seek FSC certification for our forests, have that 20-year management plan, 5-year operating plan, and just continue to evolve and grow and move these things towards old growth forests and things like that.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll call. Oh, you're not done.
I was going to ask about the road tour before I forget.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Just quickly, a little bit on an aside, but and I'll try and point it. We're not going to go past this property, but just out of curiosity, or just show of hands, who is unable to attend the road tour on Wednesday this week? Unable. Okay. So Brian. Sorry, just can you keep them up? Thanks. Just want to make sure that we're not waiting around. I knew that.
Do we need to reschedule this?
Starting to get insulted. And 2, 4, 5 of 12.
5 of 12. Can't attend. I know things come up. What do you want to do? Go ahead, Councillor McGillis.
Yeah, I would have went, but I have a doctor's appointment for a hip replacement.
Yeah.
So.
It'll probably be difficult to reschedule it anyway. We'll probably end up with, a handful of people that can't come. I know, Councillor Lang, you're, if it's either Wednesday or not at all. What do you want to do? So go ahead.
Perhaps if I could, I think we also think maybe in the fall when we're planning capital projects, there might be another opportunity to engage council members for a bit of a tour if there's certain projects that we want to plan for 2024. And so I think there might be an additional opportunity, down the road if some councilors are not able to attend this road tour. We could probably entertain something else in the fall.
Go ahead.
Do you mean just go look at the specific projects that we're looking at the time in the fall? Just at the specific?
Yeah, I think something that might be a little bit more tied into capital. I think for this road tour, we wanted to get our new council members that were able to attend familiar with our massive, I'm not used to such a big area, but our network. And so I think we had planned we've planned a good day on Wednesday, but I think that there's always opportunity that we could plan something else again. And so to your comment, I think we'll always have difficulty to try and have an event where everybody's able to attend.
Okay, so we'll carry on. Councillor Lang?
Thank you. If we decide to carry on, I would appreciate some kind of a itinerary, just even like what time are we finished in the evening? There's, I've got 2 people trying to schedule meetings for that evening. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. So what is the timing, Ben?
A
please?
limo. We were going to take a limo now. We were yeah. So we were leaving Finch at 8:30, returning around 4:30 back to Finch, and covering. I think one of the big things we wanted to do was be able to tour the GFL waste facility, and we've got that all lined up. So bus is booked, and the lunch is booked as well. So we'll carry on, and if you want to send a friend, that's fine too, I guess.
Okay, that's good. We'll carry on. Yeah, we can't go canceling all those well-laid plans. All right, so maybe just remind people of the time, send out a reminder email of the time. Okay, very good. Now I don't know where we are here.
We had to vote
okay,
still.
Yes, okay, I'll call the question. You heard the motion previously. Do you need it reread? Do you know where we're at? That's the forestry. Okay. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, thank you very much, Ben. We're on to 7.4, which is planning, April 2023 Regional Incentive Program, approval of the first intake of applications. Welcome, Tara, and Madam Clerk, please.
There are 2 motions for this item. We'll deal with the first one first. It's moved by Councillor Jason Broad, seconded by Councillor Densham, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry approve funding under the Stay, Discover, Grow Regional Incentives Program in the total amount of $159,845.33 for the following 6 projects. 1, Doran Bay Resort and Model Ship Museum, Municipality of South Dundas, in the amount of 50% up to a max of $50,000. 2, Violet's Vault, Municipality of South Dundas, in the amount of 50% up to a max of $11,375. 3, Bishop's House, Glengarry Fencibles Trust, Township of South Glengarry, in the amount of 50% up to a max of $21,627.25. 4, Bray Heights, Township of South Glengarry, in the amount of 50% up to a max of $19,305.50. 5, Holly Hill Farm, Township of South Glengarry, in the amount of 50% up to a max of $7,537.58. And 6, Harbors, Greenhouses, and Forestry, Township of South Stormont, in the amount of 50% up to a max of $50,000.
I'm glad it was you that had to read all of that, not me. Okay, please go ahead, Tara. And then Tara's going to present these first, what are they, 6? Then we'll vote, and then we'll go to the one that Councillor Gaindaw has a conflict on. So go ahead, please.
So I'm very happy to be here today, and it's always exciting to come to you with the work that is being done across the counties. So in our very first meeting with our new committee, so we operate periodically throughout the year with the Regional Incentives Program Approvals Committee. It's represented by 3 county councillors and 2 lay appointees. In our first meeting, we had gone through all of the applications as well as the policy document itself. So we did a bit of a training piece just to explain the goals of that program. And if anyone ever has questions, please don't hesitate to approach me on how it works, what we fund, how it operates, who's been funded in the past. I will state that one of the interesting facts is that sometimes we sway towards one municipality or another, but if we look at the totality of all of the projects, they are so well represented across the 6 municipalities. And it's exciting to drive through your communities and actually see the huge impact that this program has had. In this round, we had previously budgeted $250,000 towards the program this year. I do anticipate that we'll likely have 2 intake periods. So in the first intake, we had 7 successful applications, of which 6 we're looking at right now. Of the 7 have been recommended to you. This has to do with the fact that since I had taken over the program, I've changed a bit in how the format of the applications runs, and typically the applications that do make it to the committee at this point are ready to make it to the committee, which is why you will see a higher number of them succeeding based on the funds available and the availability of what they're working on. In this application round, the 6 that we're looking at have been working with us now for quite some time. The first one is Dorn Bay Resort and Model Ship Museum. Rob Hunter and I have been working with this client for a couple of years as he's prepared for this project. It's a large-scale project on County Road 2. It's an existing resort location that's putting in a 4-story resort and spa. It's going to be a beautiful accommodation for those visiting. It's going to feature the 350-plus model ships at that location. As well, he's going to be accommodating guests from all over with his spa services in an eco-friendly building that will be one of a kind for the county. It's got extensive work. He is looking for one of our maximum amount, which is the $50,000 for that project, which is substantial. His total project cost is evaluated at close to $200,000, not including a large amount of funding he's already put into construction at that site on previously purchased items that are not eligible for the program, but which are definitely part of that total investment. We're looking at Bishop's House, Glengarry Fencibles Trust. For those of you who are unaware, Bishop's House is a National Historic Site of great importance to Canada's history. It's been going through a massive revitalization over the past years to reopen that site to the public as a National Historic Site run by a volunteer board, essentially, who's managing it into the future. They're looking at accessibility improvements that will allow their guests to enjoy the back porch in inclement weather and other situations. So it is going to be used for parties and festivals, events, visitors, and it's also an accessibility feature to allow guests to access that point. Bray Heights is a new business in South Glengarry. They're going to be working largely with individuals with developmental difficulties. They're doing animal therapy sessions. They're going to be doing guest visits, walk a donkey, I believe, is one of the proposed uses of the site. So they've got a really ambitious tourism and service-oriented business plan. We're looking at Holly Hill Farm. So Holly Hill Farm has been long in existence as a riding stable in South Glengarry. The project proposal is that it has recently succeeded, so there is a new family owner who's taken over, and she's trying to expand her services by making some major upgrades to her arena and her signage so that she can become a more competitive business and allow for more guests to utilize her services. And Harbour's Greenhouses and Forestry is another family-based, new and expanding agricultural business. So Harbour's Greenhouses and Forestry has been running as a small business, and it's now going through a major scale-up with the acquisition of the greenhouse that they're proposing that will allow them to really compete in Eastern Ontario for a tree seedling market that's actually going to go across Ontario. So right now, most of our tree projects, including the ones in our forest that was just managed, those trees would typically be coming from Northern Ontario or Southern Ontario. In this case, Harbours will be able to compete with those markets by seeding up to, I believe it's 1 million seedlings in the next coming years. So it's really going to push the opportunity at that business. It's also going to create a learning center. So he does give courses and offers tours and different types. So it's a really innovative business and another fun one to see. And he's also looking at the max of $50,000 towards that $156,000 plus investment. So just to note that these 6 applications in total represent 6 of the 7 that we're looking at today, and they're well within the budgeted $250,000. The next intake is open right now. It's closing on May 5th. And I do anticipate in that intake that we will likely exhaust the funds for this year, providing that the applicants that I've been speaking with and the economic development officers have been working with me on do complete their applications in time. We have significant interest for the second round as well as for the first. And some of the people that came to me for the first intake, of course, are now coming in the second intake. It is a process to get not so much the application. Our application we've streamlined as much as possible, and I help the applicants directly, as do the economic development officers in writing it, but acquiring quotes and just deciding on your project and making it through engineering and initial requirements can take time.
Great, thank you for that. Councillor Broad.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Chair, could you just mention the Violet's Vault project?
Oh my God, my apologies. I skipped through too quickly and I missed Violet's Vault. And I have been so excited working with Louise on her project. So Violet's Vault is the national, I believe it was a Bank of Montreal. I remembered bank, I couldn't remember which one. Bank of Montreal location in Iroquois. It is gloriously located across the street from a school. So I suspect that Violet's Vault is going to become a candy favorite for the children who are just about to realize that a candy store is across from the school. And she's opening up an arcade, a candy store, and a bakery on site. And one of her unique features is, and I hope it's okay with her that I announce this because she has been quite public, Violet is her daughter's name, and Violet has some intellectual difficulties. And part of her mission has been to work with her daughter somewhere she can have successful employment and joy in what she does. And Louise, the owner, and her husband have been working hard on acquiring this location, and they have proceeded with some of the gutting work, which is not part of the application. And they're getting ready to open this year, and it's going to be a great addition to Iroquois. And I know that the school will certainly, I don't know if the teachers will appreciate it, the students will definitely appreciate it, but it is also going to be a tourism draw, because I don't know about you, but when I travel, I tend to discover fudge factories across Canada and ice cream shops and candy shops. And I think that even the popcorn location here, Happy Popcorn on Main Street in Cornwall, has showcased just what a huge draw these types of locations can do to a community, because it is something that our visitors are seeking. And it's going to be a really nice addition to the area. And she has requested a grant to help with some of the final pieces of her project, because of it's something that we see frequently with the applications. We don't chastise them, I guess I could say, or penalize them if they've started a project in some cases, because we do allow for phased projects, but anything retroactive we don't pay for. So in her case, they've gutted the building, including, I believe, taking off a very heavy vault door, and have prepared the work. So none of that is eligible, but we don't penalize them for moving forward on parts that are eligible, which is in her case the HVAC and the signage components, as well as, I believe, a few accessibility features.
Okay, thank you, Tara. Questions for Tara? Comments? They're great looking projects. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, the other resolution.
It's moved by Councillor MacDonald, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre, that Council approve funding under the Stay, Discover, Grow Regional Incentives Program in the total amount of $8,999.11 for the following project: Turquoise Compass Wellness, Township of South Stormont, in the amount of 50% up to a max of $8,999.11.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Tara. So the final application that's come forward is for Turquoise Compass Wellness. So this is it's a property located in South Stormont that is proposing to become a wellness retreat. So in the very first phase of their construction, the couple who purchased this property actually just moved here from the Maritimes, where they had run a similar business based on tourism getaways, where people come, it's a health and wellness day, they do a lot of corporate retreats, they have family visitation, they do groups, they do individuals, and the goal is that the owner of this business is actually a certified instructor as both a doula and as a yoga instructor. Not only does she teach both of those things, she actually teaches instructors how to do those things. So part of her business plan would also be bringing in instruction courses on how to actually be a yoga teacher. So she would be largely bringing in groups to her property, which is zoning. The zoning does allow for her to have such retreats in her forested, beautiful property. It's in Bonneville, just outside of St. Andrews East. And her proposal at the beginning of this is to put in a trail. So it's a trail through the forest to get to two beautiful gazebos that she has planned for that site, with a plan that people would come and they would enjoy that site for yoga and for retreats and for meditation and other purposes. In later phases of her project, she and her husband do hope to grow this business to include potentially in the future cabins and other associated features that would allow for overnight stays and enlarged experiences. She's also working with other local businesses, so any of the people using her getaway feature, she's going to have prepared lunches from other catered establishments, restaurants, and other businesses, and she'll be featuring a lot of product from across the county. So it's a fun first stage of this business. She's asked for a modest request for the two gazebos and for the trail that allow her to launch the business, which she will be hoping to grow over the next coming years.
Thank you, Tara. Questions or comments? Seeing none, you've all heard the motion. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Tara.
Thank you, Madam Warden.
All right, we're on to 8 tenders and quotations. And boy, oh boy, do you have a list of them there. So we'll get started with 8.1, South Nation River Bridge. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Guédon, seconded by Councillor Broad, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the tender from Clearwater Structures Incorporated for the comprehensive rehabilitation of the South Nation River Bridge at their unit prices totaling $2,549,499 plus HST, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all documents to give effect to the contract, and that Council authorize the use of the SDG Bridge Reserve as necessary to offset any over-expenditure associated with this project, and that Council authorize the contractor to close County Road 43 at the South Nation River Bridge and establish a detour route using County Road 7 from County Road 43 to County Road 9, West Lag, and using County Road 9 from County Road 7 to County Road 43. And that bylaw number 5394, being a bylaw to establish a community safety zone and reduce speed limit along County Road 7 within the settlement boundary of Chesterville for the duration of the bridge closure, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed. And that Council authorize staff to implement traffic calming measures along County Road 7 and County Road 9, such as reduced on-street parking, prohibition of passing, traffic monitoring, and other measures deemed appropriate to ensure orderly and safe traffic flows through the village for the duration of the road closure.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. And so first off, I want to thank Mike for all his hard work on this project. It was certainly, I think, a great evolution in the type of community engagement we should be doing on impactful projects like this. We had public meeting, presented some opportunities and options to the public that were out there, and Mike really led the charge, and also met with North Dundas Council earlier this month at a council meeting there to talk about some of the outcomes of that community engagement, and to that end, some of those safety measures and the passing of bylaws to temporarily reduce speeds, create community safety zones, all were born from that discussion with the community. So great opportunity to change and evolve in the way we engage with the community, and something we certainly look forward to doing on big projects like this as we continue to move forward. So as council knows, this is, I would suggest, it's one of our biggest bridges we have across all of SDNG. Certainly one of the most expensive bridge rehabilitations, if not the most expensive bridge rehabilitation I've ever been a part of in my time here at the county. And what's sad about it in some ways is it's really not a very complicated job. It's just a big job, very conventional type of rehabilitation work that's taking place. But to do it effectively, efficiently, and to get it done this construction season, we are recommending closure of the bridge. It is a priority project for us. We are fiscally challenged by this project, but because it is a priority and we've gone through this engagement and we're ready to go, we're recommending award of this tender. I do want to note that there is $200,000 in contingency work that's included in that budget, and that has to do with the deck itself and the type of steel that's in the deck. Unfortunately, the original bridge drawings that we have just don't have enough detailed information in it to be able to make some determinations. So we've got a design ready to, under the worst case scenario, I think we could describe it as, which we hopefully can pull back as we start to get into the actual work and see what we have, what we're faced with as we start to take apart the top of the deck. So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to council for any questions or concerns.
Any comments or questions? No? All right. It was all in favor of the motion. Any opposed? Seeing none, it's carried. Okay, on to 8.2, Martintown Bridge Rehabilitation. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor MacDonald, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry direct staff to return bid deposits and retender the Martintown Bridge project for construction in 2024 due to budget constraints.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. Unfortunately, because we're faced with that fiscal challenge at the South Nation River Bridge, when we opened this tender, looked at pricing we received from the bidders that submitted prices, we're tight and actually would be over budget with this one. South Nation is our priority project this year, so our recommendation to council is to return bid deposits, retender this bridge, and take this work on next year. We can actually, the idea that we have is actually retender it towards the fall of this year so that we have a locked-in price leading into budget before we get to budget, so we have some certainty in terms of what that cost is going to be. This will rise to the top, I would suggest. Well, we actually, Inkerman's a pretty important project that we're lining up for next year, which we're going to talk about in the future, but this is a priority project for us next year, so I see no reason why we won't have that financial capacity to do it. What we do have by saying no to this tender due to that budget concern is some capacity to take on some additional work this year and move some work that we had anticipated for next year ahead. These are very much smaller scale projects. In particular, the one that we have essentially tender ready is the Hoople Creek Bridge, which is located on County Road 14, just north of the 401 overpass in front of David Brown Construction, if you can kind of picture that bridge. It's a rigid frame structure, very simple type of rehabilitation work, chipping concrete, replacing the barrier, I believe, and guide rail, and that's it. It's an in and out type of project. We did survey some contractors just to see if they had the capacity for that scope of work, because it is, we're gonna, I think, how many weeks of work was that one again, Mike? I'm sorry. So 3 to 4 months worth of work, 16 weeks worth of work, and that's a great type of project for middle of summer start to end of summer start, or excuse me, the middle of summer start, so that you can finish up before the weather turns. And so there is some capacity out there in the market right now to take on that smaller scale type of project. So with council, not that I'm looking for any kind of endorsement, but just if council has no objection, we'd like to put that out and at least present that as an option to council. The other idea we have as well is this is something we've been intending to do for some time. We just haven't had that capacity, the internal capacity, but by not going ahead with Martintown, we free up a little bit of capacity, is do some minor rehabilitation work, set aside $200,000 worth of funds in the bridge budget to do things like sealing concrete, some small concrete patches on certain areas, maybe some minor maintenance work underneath a bunch of bridges. So just kind of take on those small things that pay off in the long run, where we've struggled to be able to find the capacity to do it, but we will have that capacity this year. So that's, again, summary of where we are with this one, and happy to answer any questions council might have.
Any questions or comments for Ben? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. 8.3, 2023 truck purchases. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry authorize the purchase of 2 one-ton trucks to Blue Mountain Chrysler Limited for the total tender price of $131,832, and 1 3/4-ton truck to Meyer Chevrolet Buick GMC for a total tender price of $64,799, and 3 half-ton trucks to Blue Mountain Chrysler for the total tender price of $174,360, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all documents to give effect to the purchases.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Go ahead, Ben.
Just very, very straightforward, but do want to note to council that with those purchases, we're under budget based on what we had. We'll talk a little bit about that with the disc mowers, because we are a little over budget on the next one, but all in all, we balance out to the correct side of the ledger.
Questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you very much. 8.4, purchase of new disc mowers. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Guédon, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry accept the joint tender from Colvoy Enterprises 2012 Limited for the procurement of 6 disc mowers at a total tendered price of $133,958.64. The joint tender includes the following: United Counties of SDG, 4 mowers, $89,231.75. The Township of North Glengarry, 2 mowers, $44,615.88. $1.88, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract.
Go ahead, Ben.
We're almost halfway there, folks. This one just slightly over budget, but again, we're under budget when you could consider all the equipment we're purchasing this year. So something necessary as part of the work that we do, and these will be available for use as soon as we are ready to start mowing.
Great. Go ahead, Councillor Bergeron.
Thank you, Deputy Warren. 3-year lifespan is awfully short time for a piece of equipment to be functioning. And I don't know if I read correctly in the package, but the ones that you are intending to buy, do they have protective components so that they would last longer?
Yeah, keep in mind that these mowers, unlike those that have it in the farm, and I will look to my experts that are around the table, these things, they start essentially middle to end of May, and they don't stop until October, November. Like it's, every day, all day long that they're going in, and it's not a flat field either. They're in the ditches where they're hitting tree branches, culverts, tires, refrigerators, dead animals, bell boxes that have fallen over. So they're faced with some pretty harsh conditions. So yeah, getting 3 years out of them is a stretch, to be perfectly honest with you. So the protective equipment that it comes with, like they have shear bolts, they've got all sorts of different protective equipment. And I can tell you that we have used, I don't know how many different types of models, and the model we've got right now is the one that seems to be the best in terms of protecting, the major components of that disc mower. So it's, it's the shear bolts that are going, it's easy to fix in the field, and the guys can get going and mowing again. So I think my understanding is that these are the best things the best units we've been able to find so far.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, and thanks for the presentation. So are we all disc mowers now, or no flail mowers, or we do have a combination?
We do a combination of flail and disc. Disc is, we try and keep the discs in the spots where we know they can be efficient, effective, and out of harm's way. And the flail is where we're into the heavier stuff, where we're more worried about running into debris or slopes, back slopes, and things like that.
All right, I would agree that the disc mowers are definitely quicker. And but the flail mowers, the only disadvantage I see to the disc mowers is that it leaves that everything long, it lays on top, and as the new growth comes, it pushes it up so that you tend to see the dead, weeds and grass there for quite a bit longer before the stuff grows through it. But yes, if we're doing both, it makes sense.
Okay, anything else? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you. On to 8.5, Williamstown Storm Sewer Lining.
It's moved by Councillor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor Broad, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the tender from Clear Water Structures Incorporated for the lining of various storm sewers within the village of Williamstown at their unit prices totaling $94,915 plus HST, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. We were well under budget for this project, so what staff would like to do, and I should say, we've worked with Clearwater in the past. We're happy to work with them. We look forward to seeing this project done in Williamstown. It's going to be a great rehabilitation that will help when we do get to the resurfacing of that area in the near future. But what we'd like to do, and I just want to bring this up to council, is with that surplus money is actually look to do some additional lining and culvert work across SDG. So we'll come back to council with some additional plans for council's approval, but that's the intention there is, make hay when the sun shines with this one.
Great. Any questions? All in favor of the motion? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 8.6, specialty paint markings.
It's moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the joint tender from Crossroads Pavement Markings Incorporated for specialty paint markings at their unit prices totaling $74,895.80 plus HST for 2023. The joint tender includes the following: United Counties, $59,035; Township of North Dundas, $310; Municipality of South Dundas, $11,115.80; Township of North Stormont, $725; Township of South Stormont, $500; Township of North Glengarry, $840; Township of South Glengarry, $2,370, and that the term of the contract with this company include an option to renew for one additional 1 year, 2024, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to this contract.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Go ahead, Ben.
Pretty straightforward. It's a necessary maintenance item that we do need to do. We did see the reflection and paint cost increases in this tender. Certainly there's a big increase there compared to what we normally pay, but from what I'm hearing across Ontario and across, quite frankly, North America, it is to be expected and something we have to budget for in the future.
Go ahead, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I appreciate you putting in the 30.6. I do realize it's over 2 years. I think it's good for us to get a handle on how the inflation is affecting us and how it's going up. And obviously, I've asked these questions before, but wherever you can, let us know how much extra it's costing us. So it's good for us for our decision making.
Good point, Councillor Lang. Anybody else? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to 8.7, microsurfacing.
It's moved by Councillor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor McDonald, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the joint tender from Duncor Enterprises Incorporated for microsurfacing on various roads at their unit prices totaling $763,137.08 plus HST. The joint tender includes the following: United Counties of SDG, $646,281.08; Municipality of South Dundas, $116,856, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Ben.
We're getting there. So microsurfacing, we talked about it at our last meeting in terms of reducing what we had in overall accomplishment to be able to account for some of the variation in hot mix, the hot mix project that was awarded at our last meeting. So this is consistent with that decision. We do have South Stormont has approached us. They also want to jump onto this tender, so we are going to be working with them to get some additional quantity included in this contract, and that's where we are.
Go ahead, Councillor McDonald.
So if this is passed, when are you going to be doing Main Street in Alexandria? Is there a date, or so I can...
No date yet, but certainly, generally speaking, we see micro happening towards the end of the summer. It really depends on when they come in. I'm not sure if we have a schedule set out, a particular schedule, but we'll certainly work with North Glengarry to make sure that we have that well planned out, because that's a busy street and it's going to be disruptive.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to 8.8, Inkerman Girder pre-purchase.
Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Bergeron, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the tender from Iron Bridge Fabrication Incorporated for the fabrication of new bridge girders for the total tendered price of $261,427 plus HST, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all documents to give effect to the contract.
Go ahead, Ben.
So all we're doing here is just buying big beams for this bridge and make sure they get fabricated on time for construction next year. So really kind of working ahead, making sure that we're ready to go next year.
Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you. On to 8.9, plow and spreader purchase, winter 24-25 unit.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Broad, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the joint tender from Gincor Industries for the supply, installation, and delivery of 3 plow and spreaders, one for the United Counties of SDG, one for the Township of North Glengarry, and one for the Township of South Stormont, at their total submitted price of $548,350 plus HST, and that the Manager of Operations be authorized to negotiate directly with various cab and chassis suppliers in order to purchase 3 cab and chassis units on behalf of SDG, the Township of North Glengarry, and the Township of South Stormont, reporting back to Council at a later date with the final negotiated price, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contracts.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks. Somewhat similar to what we had discussed, of what the process we had to go through last year as well. Right now, cab and chassis, the market is still just there's over demand for the supply that's out there, or capacity available on the manufacturing lines right now. So we did get a successful bid for the plow equipment, so that's the plow, all the stuff that goes on the back of the truck, and actually making it work. But we just didn't get any. We didn't get any bids for the cab and chassis, which, to be quite frank with council, we were afraid would happen, and had been warned from the local dealers that was a strong possibility / was probably going to happen. Our hope was that somewhere, someone else from across Ontario or whomever was looking at our different e-bidding, the tenders that were coming out, someone else maybe had one that they had already pre-ordered and was going to be manufactured on the line, or had one in stock that they could put forward. And I do want to make a note that this is not for this year. This is actually coming in a year from now. So this is like how far ahead we have to be buying these things, and even when we're trying to do that, we're not getting people bidding because they just can't bid right now. There's no capacity right now. So what we're asking council to do is to essentially leave it with us. Because we're looking for 3 cab and chassis, we maybe have a little bit more purchasing power. That being said, we might not be able to actually find 3 from the same manufacturer. We may have to go over here and over here to be able to find it, but we want to do more research, and if we can jump on one, we want to be able to jump on one. We know at a staff level kind of what that market value is. We'll come back just to report back to council on if we're able to be successful in locking one in. And again, the reality is that we budget for it as part of our budget in 2024, and it comes in 2024. So there's this isn't impacting our budget this year. It's coming up. So that's where we are right now with this, and certainly welcome any council input on the proposed plan on how we get this plow built for next winter. Next winter.
Thank you, Ben. Any comments or questions on this? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to 8.10, Administration Building Flat Roofs.
It's moved by Councillor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor Densham, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the tender from Simlet Contractors Limited for the Administration Building Flat Roof Replacement at their bid price totaling $251,244 plus HST, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract.
Relatively straightforward. Happy to answer any questions on this one.
Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Councillor McGillis.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Was there any local bidders that bid on this contract, or this tender?
I know here, Mike, I'll let you answer that one. Go ahead.
So I reached out to many bidders to advise them of this opportunity when it was posted online, just to make sure that we had that awareness out there. And as you can see, only 2 opted to bid. Basically, it started with a Google search of every roofer that was in the industry, flat roofs within 50, 100 kilometers roughly, and just call them up and say, just so you guys are aware, this just went up online. And so that was sort of where I drew the line at trying to go after the local bid. And so I believe that Simluck and Flynn aren't too far away, or don't have, or they have shops that aren't too far away necessarily, so they do operate pretty regularly in this region at least.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Are there any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. This is the last one, 8.11, 2023, skin patching.
Moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor Bergeron, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry accept the tender from Blair Asphalt Products for hot mix skin patching at their unit prices totaling $110,670 plus HST, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So under budget, we're happy to see some of the pricing we received through this tender. What we're looking at is some additional areas to pave, and the value of that, depending on how it fits within the purchasing policy, I'd like to come back to council with potential change order to be able to extend some additional work, get some more work done with the budget we have set aside for this year.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just so I'm clear, when you say unit price, is that unit kilometer?
Unit price, so it's the price per ton is the units we bid on for this one.
So what, can you give me a ballpark of what that would be per kilometer?
I will have to do some math and get back to you.
I'm not in a rush.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Are there any opposed? The motion's carried. Thank you very much. That was rather painless. We're on to bylaws. Number 9.1, approval of equipment lending agreement. Madam Clerk.
Moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor Bergeron, that bylaw number 5395, being a bylaw to authorize an equipment lending agreement for a grader between the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry and the municipality of South Dundas, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. We talked about this, the informal arrangement we had, and so we just needed to put pen to paper. Mimics what, similar to what we've done with South Stormont. So South Dundas is using the grader right now, and from what I gather, things are working well. So this is just to make sure we've got all the liability tied right up.
Okay. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much, Ben. All right, we're on to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please.
It's moved by Councillor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre, that all items listed under the consent agenda section of the agenda be received for information purposes.
All in favor of the motion? And none opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. On to boards and committees. Madam Clerk. Oh, okay. All right, well, I'm not giving a warden's report, that's for sure. We have the Joint Liaison Committee, and I don't believe it has met. Is that correct? Okay. So on to the Library Board. Who would like to report? Thank you, Councillor Landry.
Through you, Madam Chair. So we met on March 30th. We welcomed a delegation from Peggy Malcolm, which is a consultant with Ontario Library Services. She briefed us on, I guess, on Ontario Library Services. Also, as far as action, so we went through a policy review with in respect to the board's code of conduct. And then also there was discussion items where we're looking at bringing in what they call the Square, which is an online payment through a phone. We also are glad to mention we had a pilot project with the Maker Lab in our Finch branch is now moving forward, and we're going to make it a full pledge and getting full staff for that branch. And last, we also discussed the Morewood getting an express depot. So there's still stuff to be discussed, but looking forward to having a depot for that community. And we will be no meetings in April. I think we're meeting back in May. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your report. On to the Police Services Board. Who would like to report? No, nothing to report? Okay, thank you. On to the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. Councillor Lang, would you like to report?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. And if I miss anything, don't be shy. COVID's still present, obviously, and there are still a few deaths locally, but similar to as we presented last month, they are almost always with people with extreme underlying conditions and sometimes multiple conditions that would be life-threatening, you know. We're making progress getting back to our regular programming. It's coming along. We passed our budget, asking the province for a 2% increase, so let's hope. Strategic plan, was some discussion of it. Don't know that we're going to go to a big strategic plan, but maybe just a little bit of a revamp of where we were in the past until we can kind of get back to normal. Just an item of note, we won't be able to facilitate bringing in flood victims from Northern Ontario this year just because of the refugees in the city. So that's something that we had done for numerous years, but will have to be off the table this year. That's all I can think of for now.
Excellent. Thank you for your report, Councillor Lang. On to Glenstore-Dunn Lodge. Councillor Lang or Councillor Broad?
Yeah, our meeting was canceled due to sickness, so we were scheduling for next month.
Excellent. Thank you very much. St. Lawrence River Institute, Councillor Gaindo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, nothing to report other than the AGM will be on May 17th if anyone is interested in attending.
Very good. Thank you. Raisin South Nation Source Water Protection, Councillor Bergeron.
Yes, we're still having, the province has mandated the reduction of salt in the protection zones, and that includes some parts of highways. It's actually going to have a huge impact on Winchester because Winchester has a well at the south of the town and there's one at the north, which is going to affect businesses and parking lots, which can bring up liability issues because if you can't put salt down and someone slips in your parking lot, I don't know how they're going to resolve that, really. There's also some discussion now starting about storm sewers going into filtration ponds instead of directly into waterways. And that, well, I'll keep you posted as that goes on.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Municipal Advisor, oh no, Councillor Fraser's not here. Eastern Ontario Agri-Food Network. The annual general meeting for that organization was held at Stonehouse Vineyard. I forget what the date was, but recently. And it was very well attended by members of the organization and interested parties. The two new websites were unveiled and are very impressive. I expect that they will serve the membership and the producers and the consumers very well. The organization is now fully staffed on its board. Sarah Good from the City of Cornwall is the appointed member from the city, and the Mayor of Castleman is now the appointed individual for Prescott Russell. And so things are really moving along in that organization. So Regional Incentives Program Approvals Committee, either Councillor Densham or Councillor St. Pierre or Councillor Gaindo.
I'll take it, Madam
Go ahead.
Deputy Warden. On behalf of my colleagues, Councillor Gaindo and St. Pierre, and actually, Tara's already done a fantastic job kind of highlighting what the outcome was from that meeting that took place on March 27th. The committee passed 7 applications, and there was some really good deliberation and debate throughout the meeting. So I think the right applications were chosen. And as you heard through Tara's report, some very interesting and unique variety of businesses that are being supported, and I think that's going to do a lot to support tourism in our area, and so I'm pretty excited to see those come to fruition. There's still about half of the funds available, and so as Tara pointed out, I think the second intake closes on May the 5th. Is that right, Tara? Yeah, May the 5th, and Tara is happy to work with any businesses who have some great ideas on how to utilize that funding.
Very good. Thank you for your report. Now we're on to item 12, key information. We have 12.1, weed spraying policy. You better run, Ben.
Sorry, I was doing my math there and I lost track. About $51,000 per kilometer. That's 7 meters wide, 25 millimeters thick. There is some padding that needs to be done. This is in reference to the skin patching, but that's, if I wanted to double check it. I didn't get to double check it, but I'll double check, but let's go with that. For the weed spraying policy, came up at our last meeting. Council wanted to see a version, or excuse me, see the current weed spraying policy, so I've provided it as an attachment to the report. From staff's perspective, we think it's comprehensive. It reflects kind of how we do work today. If council does have some amendments or improvements that they'd like to see with that policy, we could, there are a couple things we can include in it, and I've highlighted those in the report, but from our perspective, the fact that they're not in there doesn't necessarily negate kind of how we do it or what we're going to continue to do. So I guess I'll open it up to questions and take any notes or comments council might have.
Thank you, Ben. Comments or questions? Oh, surely there's something. There isn't. Okay, Councillor Bergeron.
Thank you, Deputy Warren. I'll think of one. I did write down here, I read that only weeds listed and established as noxious will be targeted, but it seems to me when I drive along the road, it's killed everything. Is it like specific? You know, there are some weed killers that are specific to broadleaf, narrowleaf. So it was just a question that came through my head.
Yeah, as council may know, whenever we have a product, whenever we are trying to address a certain weed in the roadsides, the product that we use has to have that weed on the label. So generally speaking, there's a lot of times where even though it may not be on the label, it'll still impact that vegetation that's in the ditch. The product we use is essentially like a broadleaf product. So, but it does have, like for example, poison parsnip is on the label, thistle is on the label. So those are the types of things that are on the label. And through our mapping of our roadsides, that's the types of weeds that we're identifying, and we're taking. We can't. You know, the intention is not to get everything, but rather identify those noxious weeds with the highest densities, and those are the ones that we are making sure on the label when we're doing our work, so that it's consistent with the approach of trying to address those noxious weeds we've found on roadsides.
Councillor Lang, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. That was a good explanation. When I spray, and I've been spraying for 40 some years now, agriculturally, there's basically three types. There's a weed control out there that kills everything. There's a weed control that kills grasses, any type of long stemmy leaf blades, and broadleafs. There's basically the three, and there's slight variations on all of those. So usually we're using a broadleaf, I think, and that's why you're seeing many different types of weeds dying, but not usually the grasses. Sometimes we'll tinge them a little bit, set them back, and then they'll come back. To what you would put at the beginning here, so our policy is to try to leave 1 meter next to the private property. Is that because I'm in favor of, I know you'd mentioned maybe change, I'm in favor of getting as close as we possibly can, because if you're doing this, and the reason that this was always there was to keep these noxious weeds out of the fields and not let them, spread anymore, because as farmers we want to spray as little as possible, because, some people don't think it's great for the environment. It costs a lot of money. There's many reasons to keep your spray volume down. So I would be interested in trying to get as much of that 1 meter as we can, but I do understand where you're at. Like if there's a sensitive crop there, it's pretty hard to get right on that edge.
If I may, and I will say, that is in the policy. We're operating at 25 kilometers an hour, roughly, and the property line varies, or you don't see the property line. So it's really, if I may, it's an intention-based type of statement in that policy, and certainly we do our best to try and. The idea is to provide a buffer to the private property, so that we're not, it's going to be impossible to spray right on property line everywhere all the time. It's to make sure, you know, to identify to people, our intention is to make sure we're safely on our property, is really what the intention is there. So, and to that end, you know, that's wording we can improve in the policy if we do open up the policy again, just to maybe make it a little more broad. We use the word broad a lot in this presentation, but, you know, make it more broad so that it doesn't seem so, you know, 1 meter and someone goes out and measures, you're half a meter or 0.75 meters away or 1.2 meters away. I mean, the intention is to buffer from private property.
Sounds better safe than sorry. Councillor Broad, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Mr. Don. In the policy, I think one of the key points was the communication to the public, and it's clear that the communications would come through the website. 2 reasons I'm bringing this up. I'd like to see when the website would be updated with the current information. We have several organic farmers reaching out to us to make sure they get their signs posted at the right time, because posting it too early does not work either, as they fall over and be removed. Just wondering when the website would be updated with the next information piece.
To be honest with you, I'm going to look at Todd here. I think we've just updated our website very recently, so and then we push that information out to the local municipalities as well. What's different this year, as you may recall, or I can't remember if I had expressed this to council at when we awarded the weed spraying tender, but the county is really taking the lead for all the on behalf of all the local municipalities. So we'll definitely make sure that information is pushed out. We're actually going to start running ads in the local papers this week. They should be published this week as well on behalf of SDG and the local municipalities. So some of that communications piece is starting to roll out. We did have our pre-construction meeting with the contractor last Friday. I was there for that, as well as Phil, and we're all set to go. It's going to be starting in mid-May. It's always weather dependent, and the next couple of weeks really sets the tone in terms of how fast things are coming up and how quickly we should be getting on it. But you know, this work is going to be happening very, very soon. So those that want to put out no spray signage, I would say if they can target that at the beginning of May, that's the right time to do it, because if they're out there, then it's, you know, certainly we can make note of it and all those good things. So absolutely want to push and do our best to get the information out to the public for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Communication with the public is absolutely critical on this issue. We've kind of had some difficulties in the past with regards to that. To Councillor Broad's point, I mean, this policy was written I think, 10 years ago. And so social media is not listed in there as a way of communicating. I'm sure you already do the social media, but it should really be in there in order to make sure that we get the word out. So is there anything else? Otherwise, we're good on that. Thank you very much, Ben. 12.2 Administrative Update, April 2023. Go ahead, Maureen.
Thank you. I'll just go through my update quickly. I did provide a bit of a calendar of meetings that I attended in March. One item that I'd like to maybe draw a little bit of attention to, there was a fantastic initiative between the counties and Cornwall and Akwesasne in March to work with potential cruise lines that would be able to come into the Cornwall Harbor, and then from there's opportunities for different tours and opportunities to see parts of SDG and Akwesasne. So I thought it was, looking at it was over, I think it was 3 days, Tara, like a couple of days before and after. So a very good collaborative effort, and I think that initially we see some positive outcomes from that. Not immediately, but we might see something in as early as 2024. I wanted to also maybe just briefly talk about the ice storm that we had. I know all of your local municipalities have been trying to deal with quite a bit of the branches and the roads and the difficulty of that storm. Our crews worked diligently. I think that we will be quite a while trying to clean up the fallen trees. One thing also that I'd like to let everybody know is that from the storm that we had at Christmas time and this most recent storm, we are continually trying to meet before and after these weather events to make sure that our communication is working well between ourselves, our first responders, OPP, if there's road closures, how do we continually try to communicate? How do we get the right information to everybody? So we've been trying to work on that, and I think we're coming up with some good initiatives there. I wanted to maybe just taking a look at some items that are coming up at our next, so we have our road tour on Wednesday. There's an open house in Ingleside for Wills Transfer on May 2nd. I wanted to let everybody know at the May 15th County Council meeting, we will have a delegation from the EOWC. They will come in and they'll provide update on their strategic priorities, but they're also going to provide an update on the 7 and 7 project. We will extend an invitation out to council members with all of the local municipalities if they'd like to come in and attend part of that meeting. They'll also have the opportunity to view it online. The warden's breakfast is, we have a strategic planning session planned for May 25th. South Stormont has been able to allow us to access their community center. And so we've got that to look forward to. The warden's breakfast is planned for June the 16th. In a previous communication, I think I'd indicated the 23rd, but it's been changed to the 16th. AMO conference is coming up. And that's about it for the items that I wanted to highlight moving forward from getting into the end of April and into May.
Thank you, Maureen. Councillor Landry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, just a quick question. So I see it mentions in there where we're tracking all the costs associated. Have we heard any feedback from upper levels of government as far as if there's potential funding, not only for here, but also local municipalities, but anything on the pipeline?
So that's a really good question, and I know typically we do sometimes get communicated to from the province based on that storm. A couple of weeks has passed, so I might reach out to our rep from MMAH and just inquire. We very deliberately wanted to track our costs in case there was a mechanism to recover any of those costs, and even to bring to council's attention what those costs are going to be as we work through the months ahead. So I will contact MMH, and then I will, and if there is an opportunity, I'll make sure that I also notify our local municipalities.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, thank you for the update, and I'll add a little bit to that one. I got a call yesterday from our drainage superintendent concerned there's a lot of drainage ditches throughout the counties. He was specifically speaking of South Glengarry and likely North Glengarry as well, because I think they work with them. But after the ice storm of '98, I do know there was funding available, and I think it went through the Conservation Authority, so I'll check that angle this afternoon. But to clean up a lot of these ditches, is the brush and stuff that's fallen in them will plug up and dam up on its own and create issues. So that's something maybe if we're looking for funding that it was available last time and maybe could be used this time. A question. We're going to try to get our roadsides cleaned up. Do we have any policy? I see a lot of homeowners dragging brush from their whole lot out to the roads, county and municipal roads, and piling it all nice and neatly there. Is our policy that we're going to look after all that for them?
Go ahead, Maureen.
That's a good question. I don't have an answer for you currently. I know that some municipalities have opened up their landfill sites to allow that type of debris to kind of be taken back, dropped off free of charge on certain dates. I think that if it ends up in our county roadways, I'm going to look to Mr. DeHaan, but I think that would be difficult for us to try to police. We do have a significant amount that we are going to be busy with trying to clean up on our roadsides. We've had significant trees come down. So that's a good question. I think that it's also something that could also raise with our local CAOs, but I think it's going to be a challenge. And I would imagine that many will also look to opportunities to try to burn some of the brush and debris to try and mitigate having that much, on their properties.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Warden. We encourage our, property owners to pile it nicely and bundle it up and we're picking it up at the front of their properties in South Stormont. Also, we had boxes out there in different places in the fire departments, and also in St. Andrews and Long Sault, Ingleside, Newington. They were able to bring it up to, I think, till Friday. So now it's just at the front, so that's what we did. So for the same reason you're saying, with respect to having everything in the ditch and clogging it up, and then it's going to be worse after. So we have crews out there doing that now, if anybody's listening.
So it sounds to me like South Stormont's the only one that right now that's picking it up. No, North Stormont too.
If I may add, yeah, so no, North Stormont only in our villages, so which appears to be on the county road. We've asked them to stack it up, but through the village, because they're not available to burn, we've opened it where we're going to be going by either chip or pick up the yard waste. The landfill site for North Stormont is taking yard waste free of charge for our residents, which is an added bonus for us. And lastly is we remove the fee for a burn permit for the month of April, which is you still need to apply for the permit, but we're waiving the fee just for that purpose, where some of the rural areas, they can get rid of that brush.
So Maureen, you mentioned talking to the CAOs. I don't know what councillors think. Maybe there's an opportunity for a coordinated sort of effort or message on this.
Absolutely. I'll follow up.
Great. Is there anything else? All right. Thank you for that. No motions or notice of motions, but petitions. Under miscellaneous business, we have the South Glengarry resolution.
Yes, through you, Madam Deputy Warden, it will require a mover and seconder, and the resolution of support reads that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry supports the resolution passed by the Township of South Glengarry regarding rural education funding, and also respectfully requests that the Province of Ontario, through the Minister of Education, provide an update on the status of any review of rural education funding, including RNEF and the 2018 Pupil Accommodation Review Guidelines, and that a copy of this resolution of support be forwarded to the Premier, Minister of Education, MPP Nolan Quinn, AMO, Roma, EOWC, and local SDG municipalities.
Before discussion, do we have a mover? Okay, Councillor MacDonald, seconded by Councillor Lang. Any comments or questions on this? Go ahead, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everybody, for looking at this. And as I'm sure all of you agree, we just want to keep front and center, keep pressure on, and just don't want to be lax. I mean, I know how shocked a lot of us were a few years back when all of a sudden, the pupil review thing came up and the schools were slated to be closed, and we don't want to get back to that point where we're kind of relaxed and not paying attention anymore. So,
thank you for that. I couldn't agree more. Is there anything else? Okay, then all in favor of the motion? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you very much. No one in unfinished business. The ratification bylaw, please, Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor Densham, that bylaw number 5396, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you very much. And the adjournment by resolution, Madam Clerk.
Moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor MacDonald, that council adjourn to the call of the chair.
All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Thank you. It's carried.